regard it a distinct honor and privilege to present Mr. Nathaniel Colley to you.
Members of the faculty and guests and fellow students. I say fellow students because in my profession we practice law, and the practice would seem to indicate that we don't yet know what we're doing, so I would assume it's a learning process. This ought to qualify us as fellow students.
Nathaniel S. Colley is a partner in the Sacramento law firm of Colley, Lindsay, and Colley, and an adjunct professor at McGeorge Law School, and maybe one of the most distinguished members of the bar anywhere. Mr. Colley, it's a distinct pleasure to have you here, and quite frankly, somewhat reassuring. You have been a man of been deeply involved in civil rights issues all your life.
Thank you very much, Senator Biden. It's a pleasure for me to be here also. And I represent, I think, something special in America, and that is you can come from anywhere and go anywhere if you really try. And I came from rural Alabama, where I was unfit for picking cotton from the very outset.
I think it stemmed from how he grew up, very poor and in segregated Alabama. He would talk about how the school buses would drive by and leave the black kids walking and the dust would blow in their face, and you know, they had substandard housing, and just that was something that was very, very important to him as he became an adult. He felt that everybody had a right to a decent home where they wanted it to be.
Nathaniel Colley was the first African-American practicing attorney in Sacramento, arriving in Sacramento in 1948, graduated from Tuskegee Institute, served in the military honorably in the Pacific Theater, became involved in various civil rights cases, had a thriving practice as a private attorney, litigated a number of discriminatory suits.
Putting him in a courtroom was probably one of the best things that could ever happen to us as people of color in the city. Because one, the law wasn't accessible to us back then, and for the most part still isn't today. So having somebody to go in there and actually use the law as a device to help people was really a resource that communities of color needed in Sacramento.
When I came to Sacramento, there was widespread discrimination in housing. I know my wife and I sought housing, but most places refused to rent to us. We filed a lawsuit against a number of developers called Ming versus Horgan. And since they were getting federal benefits, we allege in our lawsuit that they had an obligation to provide housing facilities to all without discrimination on the basis of race, color, or creed. And that was the first case in America which held that the mere receipt of public funds made it mandatory that there be no discrimination.
Nat was a giant, there's no doubt about it.
He was tapped by Governor Pat Brown to serve on the State Board of Education as the first black. During that time, made sure that textbooks began correcting the derogatory information on black history, and he made sure that they revised that. From there, JFK put him on this task force for checking discrimination of military bases, and it was 1968. He was Mr. Civil Rights of California for all his civil rights activities, all the actions that Nat took on behalf of the NAACP and also for other groups. He earned that title.
So if you have a situation where people, regardless of ethnicity or color, are denied basic rights, then those rights are the hardest fought for. And that's what he stood for. He stood for fighting for basic fundamental rights, and I think that's one of his most important legacies.
Do you think the state school board really has the power to enforce integration guidelines on local school districts?
There is no doubt in my mind about it, and if any lawyer says the State Board of Education doesn't have that power, he neither reads nor writes.
Are you suggesting that there's been a deliberate effort on the part of some state officials to discourage black employment?
I'm saying only that there has been a decrease, and why, I don't know and I don't care, except I want it to stop. And so I'm asking the court to put an end to it.
People will see that the state agencies have much power to do something about housing discrimination, but they have done nothing about it.
I think you're going to find that individuals like myself and organizations like the NAACP are going to have to try to keep us on the constitutional path, that we press forward, that we never compromise with evil, that we insist until total freedom comes to all men without regard to race, color, or creed. This is a job which must be done, and if it's to be a lasting solution and a lasting victory, it'll have to be done in love and understanding.
I would like people to know he lived and know the type of man he was. I want him to be recognized and remembered, and my mother too. You know, education was important. He felt that without Tuskegee, he never would have had an opportunity to do anything. So he believed in education.
Nathaniel Colley was a champion for all people. He opened doors for people of all races in this very community, and we hope the messaging there is that whoever you are, you can do anything. You're capable of doing anything you set your mind to, and this school is here to help you get on that path.
I thank you very much for your attention. I'm sorry that I have run a little longer than I had been told to run, but maybe this is one way I could avoid having any questions asked. Thank you. First, we're going to have to lay the facts on the line about the existence of discrimination in housing. The theory behind fair housing is that nobody is to be discriminated against. All fair housing does is try to make housing available to all people on an economic basis without regard to race, color, or creed. It seems to me this is fundamental in the American system, but somehow we have not been able to sell that idea to people.